Hey, sports porchers! It's your hockey Jesus, and I'm back for the Stanley Cup final 2024. We finally made it to the last playoff series of the year, of the season. It is the Edmonton Oilers playing against the Florida Panthers. Congratulations to both of those franchises. All those fans must be just really just super enjoying all the hype that's going on right now. And I'm hoping to contribute a little bit to that hype. I know going to a Stanley Cup finals is the greatest feeling in the history of hockey. I've been to a Stanley Cup final. I have never seen it raised live. For those of you who have, congratulations, you're seeing something rare. But what I'm going to do tonight, I'm just going to give you a little bit of a preview about what I think is going to happen as the hockey Jesus. Welcome to the Sports Porch. You are here anytime. All you got to do is smash that subscribe button and you will get the hockey Jesus after every Stanley Cup final game. I will be here after every game. I might not be live after every game. For example, Saturday, I won't be live. I'll be here on Sunday giving you some analysis, but I really want to try and give you some raw feelings after the game happens. I feel like I am your hockey Jesus, and I am best when I'm doing that. Let's talk about the Edmonton Oilers and the Florida Panthers. How did they get here? Everyone knows about the Edmonton Oilers this year. Everybody knows Connor McDavid's the best player in the world right now and has been for some years. He's in his seventh season, so for him to get to a Stanley Cup Finals, good for him. Keeping at it, finally gets there, brings his buddies along, and let's just talk about this season. They had the worst start a Stanley Cup final team has ever had. Five, 5 points in the first 10 games. That's right. They had two wins and one tie. Hockey Jesus does not like ties, but I have to mention it because that's how you get the five. You get a tie, you get a point. That's just horrible. It's the worst. It's the worst setting the start to a season that a team has ever had. I think they were 2-1-7, I believe, in their first 10 games. Just awful. Just a terrible start for them. And what did that mean? That means they had to make a coaching change. They had to bring in Chris Knobloch. Now, look, when they did this, everybody was like, "Oh my God, this is going to be a disaster." They're just bringing in Connor McDavid's coach. There's no way that he could possibly coach at the NHL level, and he has proven everybody wrong. He also brought in Paul Coffey, who really just took the defense and told them how they can score and how they can also play defense responsibly. Nobody better at it in the history of the league than Paul Coffey. I watched him win Stanley Cups with the Pittsburgh Penguins doing it. He obviously did it with the Edmonton Oilers before he even came Pittsburgh. So Edmonton's got to be thrilled to have a guy like Paul Coffey behind their bench. And that's how they got there. They ended up having a long win streak in the beginning there. Didn't quite match the Penguins' best streak of all time, but they only missed it by a game. And they really just kind of, throughout the playoffs, Skinner has really calmed himself down and has turned into a good enough goalie to get them into the Stanley Cup Finals. Congratulations to the Edmonton Oilers on a great season. The fan base is one of the best. Congratulations to the fans. And I'm not just talking about the fans who take off their shirts. I'm talking about you fans out there that keep your shirts on. You know what I'm talking about. If I follow hockey, it's okay to keep your shirt on. It's okay to take your shirt off. The hockey Jesus does not condone taking your shirt off, but if you're going to do it, it's going to happen. You're going to get a little exciting. Let's talk about the Florida Panthers. The Florida Panthers aren't really that shiny new squeaky toy because they've been here. They were here last year, and they really have just did what they did last year. Last year, they replaced their coach with Paul Maurice, and I'll tell you, he is the coach's coach. What do I mean by that? He has the most wins in NHL history without winning a Stanley Cup. So, is he due? Florida fans think so. I'm not so sure, but I can tell you he is a great fit for this team. Florida is deep. They're hard to play against, and they're hard to score against because they got Bobrovsky in goal. Look, he's not getting any younger. 35 years old. He needs to win the Stanley Cup this year to prove his legacy. He's probably going to the Hall of Fame anyways. He's been a really good goalie his whole career. Now he gets to go to two Stanley Cup finals in a row. And honestly, don't know where this is going to go. Let's back up a little bit before we move forward with the current matchups. Let's look at the regular season. Why would you want to look at the regular season, you might want to ask? Well, they haven't played, these two teams haven't played since November and December. They played twice between the end of November and the end of December, and Florida owned the Edmonton Oilers. They outscored them 5-3 and 5-1 in those two games, 10-4 if you're keeping score at home. But here's the thing. Florida Panthers have never played against Skinner. Nope. Pickard was the guy who was in goal way back when Edmonton was struggling. By that time, by the end of December, they were around 500, so they weren't as terrible as they were at the very beginning. They were getting better. They were starting to show some signs of improvement under Knobloch, but they Florida owned them, and the two guys that really torched them were Sam Bennett and Verhaeghe. Bennett had 4 points in those two games, and Verhaeghe had 5 points in those two games. Now, McDavid played good. He had 3 points in those two games. Not great by his standards, but Draisaitl, nowhere to be found. Hyman, 1 point. So Florida did do a really nice job of slowing down the Edmonton Oilers. So I think if you're a Florida fan, you're looking at that and you're saying, well, if you're an Edmonton fan, you're saying, that happened so long ago, that doesn't count. And if you're a Florida fan, you're saying, well, maybe maybe we got their number this year. And I'm not sure what's true, but I can tell you what's strange about those games is in both of those games, Edmonton had a penalty shot in both of those games. I don't know how that happens like that, but that was pretty weird. The other thing that happened in the second, I guess it was in the first game, there were a lot of penalty minutes that was going on. Edmonton had 29 penalty minutes, and Florida had 17. There was some animosity going on, so I wouldn't be surprised to see a little bit of fisticuffs going on. Maybe not fighting necessarily, but I think you'll see some roughing. I think you'll see Nurse get in Kachuk's face. I don't think those guys like each other, and I think that will be just fine for the hockey game. I actually believe that this is going to be more of a high scoring series than, rough and tumble. I don't think either team wants to play that way. I know Florida likes to hit, but you watch after the whistle is blown, they skate away. They're not interested in getting into somebody's face after the whistle blows. Edmonton tries to get into that a little bit, but honestly, they want to skate too. So regular season matchup definitely goes in favor of Florida. I don't really know how much that really means. What really is important are the current matchups. And let's start with the goalies. Everybody thinks Bobrovsky's the man. He's the reason Florida's going to win. And Skinner's just a fly-by-night guy who's had a pretty good series. Well, I hate to tell you this, but in the series, in the whole Stanley Cup Finals, Bobrovsky has a 908 save percentage. Skinner has an 897 save percentage. Bob's got a 2.2 goals against, and Skinner has a 2.5 goals against. I looked it up on Edge. I don't know if you use Edge statistics. I like to look at it just to see if there's something out there that really is like, whoa, that's a big deal. I did it for the goalies because it's easy to look at two goalies as opposed to looking at 25 players. And I'll tell you, the only difference that I saw between Bobrovsky and Skinner was Bob really does a nice job of stopping shots up the middle, and Skinner does a much better job of stopping shots that are coming in from the wing. So I think what you're going to want to see, you're going to see Florida try and come up into the slot, and you might see actually some speed coming around from the side from McDavid or Draisaitl or Hyman or maybe even Boucher, as I like to call him. They might try and challenge Bob on the wings as opposed to coming up the middle. He's really good. By the way, in all of this, There is nowhere where any of the goalies are below average when it comes to actually saving the puck in any of their zones. So there's not a weakness on any of these goalies where you can be like, shoot it to his glove or shoot it to his stick, aim for the 5 hole. There's really not a weakness in any of these goalies that I could see on edge statistic. That doesn't mean that one won't become evident. And both teams are talented enough that if that starts to happen, they will exploit it, no doubt. But since the conference finals, these two goalies are really the same goalie. Bob's got a 921 save percentage, Skinner 922 save percentage. Both have only given up 12 goals in the conference finals. Saves, Bob's got 139 saves, and Skinner actually has a couple more saves, 142. Goals against, 1.89 for Bob, 1.91 for Skinner. So you can see that both goalies are playing at the top of their level coming into these Stanley Cup finals. But I think that's about to be shattered. I don't think this is going to be a goalie series, but I can tell you that the goalie play definitely propelled them into the position they're in now. Let's talk a little bit about special teams. I know everybody's like, you gotta stay away from Edmonton's power play. It's the best, and it is very good. It's clicking at 36.4% in these playoffs. Florida's at 26.4, so they're really no slouch. But I think the thing, and look, the goals for um, Edmonton has 17 goals for, Florida has 16 goals against. Florida's a little bit better, 12 goals against and 14 against for Skinner and the Oil. But I don't think that's where the advantage is. I think where Florida is going to have to keep their game rolling is they average 33.7 shots on goal in the Stanley Cup final, in the whole Stanley Cup playoffs. And Edmonton only gives up 26 shots per game. That could be an advantage to Edmonton. If they can keep Florida from getting to the shot total that they want to get to, they might be able to squeak out an extra goal. And that might be the difference between a close game, a 3-2 game, a 2-1 game. And Edmonton has shown that they've been very good on the penalty kill. Edmonton's 100% in the conference finals. Now Florida's at 93.3. So they're doing really well too. So I would be surprised if special teams played a big role. But if anybody has the advantage here, I would say it probably goes to Edmonton, but just a very slight advantage because I think Bob could easily take that advantage away from them just because of what they do. So the matchups pretty even. Little bit of an advantage, I think, on the offensive side. Let's talk about the intangibles. The intangibles in any series are obviously you have to worry about injuries. With injuries, there's only 3 people that you really have to worry about injuries for Edmonton, and that's clearly McDavid, Draisaitl, and Boucher. I think if any of those guys get hurt, that's going to be a big loss for that team. In this case, the Oil. So I would definitely watch giving them too many minutes out there, not getting them tired, not having them block too many shots, because that's where you get injured. You block a shot, you get in the way of a puck, you break a hand, you get a puck in the face. All those weird injuries happen like that. I think the only injury really for Florida that could put a nail in their coffin is if Bobrovsky gets injured. I don't see Edmonton flying into him. I know I know Corey Perry still does play for Edmonton, so he's not against getting in the face of a goalie, but I will be surprised to see if that happens. I think that's that's the injury bug. Let's talk a little bit about Stanley Cup Finals, and I think this is an intangible that is really worth looking into. Edmonton's been in 5 Stanley Cup Finals. They've won 4 of the 5. The last one they did play in, they did lose. That was in 2006 against Carolina. That was the Rod Brindamore team, and so they're 0 for 1 in their last one, if that counts. The last time they won it was with Messier, and the 4 times before that, it was with a guy you might know is the great one, Wayne Gretzky. I don't know. I think that's a big deal because Florida comes into Stanley Cup Finals, obviously being there last year, which everybody sees an advantage, and now that they've been there, and the last one before that was where was it? It was in 1996, I believe, that Florida had a Stanley Cup Final. I have it in front of me somewhere. I'm not going to get to that right now, but yeah, so they lost twice. The first time they were swept by Colorado. The second time they only won one game against Vegas last year. And I'm just wondering what the psyche is in Florida's mind coming into Stanley Cup Finals, only winning one of the 9 games they've played. I have to think like Florida wants to get off to a quick start. And normally I would say the first game in the series is like, let's just watch it for fun because the first game really shouldn't mean much. I think it's a big deal if Florida wins the first game. If Florida wins the first game, I think you're going to see this. I think you're going to see the series go deep. If Edmonton can find a way to get into the psyche of Florida, like, oh my God, we lost again. We never win these games. Like, I don't even know if they won. I should have looked it up, but I didn't look it up. I don't even know if they won a game in Florida in the Stanley Cup Finals. Maybe they did or they didn't. Drop me a note. Let me know about that because I think that could run deep into the psyche of a team more so than you think. The other thing is in Stanley Cup Finals, superstars almost always win the Stanley Cup. I know that's not another not good thing for Florida. Okay. And we know that Connor McDavid's probably going to win a Stanley Cup at some point. It's rare that you get to a Stanley Cup. It's not like football where Dan Marino gets into a championship and he doesn't ever get back. It's most likely that Connor McDavid will be back and will probably win one of them and may even win this one. So I think that's the only time that I look back was in 2011. The Sedin twins playing for Vancouver were clearly superstars at the time in 2011. They were playing against the Boston Bruins, who were a good team. They weren't flashy, but they were a good team. And Vancouver went up 3-1 against Boston, and Boston stormed back to win that game in 7. And I'll tell you, Vancouver, I don't think has recovered since then. I know they're playing well now and they've got a new history, all new players, but that loss for the Sedin twins, that was a killer for them. And that was the only one that I could look at. I look at teams who have won the cup for the first time in the case of Florida, okay? And Vegas won it last year against Florida. St. Louis won it against the Bruins in 2019. Washington, they had a superstar, Ovechkin. You might remember him. They beat Vegas. The Ducks won it in 2007. They had a bunch of superstars. Corey Perry was actually a superstar at that time. Getzlaff was an excellent guy. They really were a stacked team back in 2007. Now, that was way many years ago. They're not like that anymore. The only team that I think that I can look and see where superstars didn't win were Vancouver. And that leads us to the last intangible of the night, which is deep, heavy teams with girth. If you saw the show on Monday, you know what girth means. Deep, heavy teams have won the Stanley Cup Finals. Look, the Vegas Golden Knights last year were better than Florida, and they were heavier and they were deeper, and that's why they really overwhelmed Florida. And I think Florida took note of that and said, wow, if we can play like that next year, which they're playing like that this year, maybe we can be that team that does it to the other team. The problem is they're playing against a much more talented team. Also, St. Louis in 2019, they did it to the Bruins. They weren't more talented than the Bruins back then, and yet they took 7 games, but they beat the Bruins. And they did it because they eventually just rolled their lines and kept at it. And I'll tell you one thing about Florida, they're not concerned. Like, they go down 1-1, they go down 1-2. They're not concerned. They're not a team that gets panicked. Paul Maurice really has this team ready to go for the long haul. So I guess that leads me to my predictions. Oh my. I honestly don't know where this series is going to go. I do know one thing. I think it's going to be a great series from the very beginning. I believe that Florida, with their different style of their deep, heavy girth team coming at Edmonton, if they can skate with Edmonton and hit Edmonton and slow them down, they're going to win the Stanley Cup. They absolutely will win the Stanley Cup. The question is can they come out from game one and game two and get it done in the first couple games? Because if they let Edmonton get to their speed game and they can't catch them, there is no way they can beat the talent that's on that team. I'll eat my words if they do, if they beat them with talent, if they just show that they can snipe and they can skate and they can get past Edmonton. Edmonton's a much deeper, better, balanced defensive team, and they know how to play the style that they don't always have to push the pedal to the metal. They know how to pull it back. They know how to play defense if they have to. If they have to get a little dirty, they will. And Skinner obviously is the wild card. If Skinner falls apart, it all falls apart for Edmonton. They just need him to be good enough. Bob needs to be on his game. He needs to make timely saves. And Florida, when they get the chance, are going to have to score. I think this is going to be a great series. It's really hard for me to predict who's going to win. I believe if this goes 7 games, I believe that Florida is going to get it. I think that Edmonton's got to probably, and I said this on the porch on Monday, Edmonton, if they're going to win it, they're going to have to win it in 5 games, and they're going to come out and have to win at least one of the first 2 games. I don't see any scenario where Florida can come out and win it in like 5 games. If they do, then that means Connor McDavid got hurt or Skinner just completely melted down, which, by the way, all this is possible. That's what I love about hockey, especially this time of year. We are guaranteed 4 games in the next 7 nights, starting Saturday night. I'm going to be loving every one of them. I'm not hitting the music tonight because you just have the Hockey Jesus Live. The music's driving me nuts. Every time I play it and I try and talk over it, it just melts me out. Thank you, my disciples out there in YouTube land, wherever you're getting your podcast, whether you get it from theporcheslive.com. Haven't said that in a while, theporcheslive.com. You can get it from there. You can get it from Spotify, anywhere you get your podcast. Just subscribe to the Hockey Jesus. I promise you, I will be back after every Stanley Cup Finals, breaking it down for you. Enjoy game one and stop back on the porch, and we'll see you at that time. Enjoy the hockey. Love it. 4 games in 7 nights. Enjoy.